Welcome back to the Morning Show here on the Raj News. It's now time to take a look at the news stories making headlines around the globe. We begin here in Nigeria, where the Council of State has approved 27,000 naira as the new minimum wage. To that effect, the federal government says it will transmit a bill to the National Assembly today for passage into law. State House correspondent EGHOSA IGUNBOR reports the Minister of Labour and Employment, Chris Ngige, as saying that the federal government has, however, agreed to pay its workers 30,000 naira monthly. And joining us now to speak on the council.
Members of the Council of State arriving for the first meeting of the year. Former military head of state, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, former head of the interim national government, Chief Ernest Shonekan, former President Goodluck Jonathan are in attendance, including Olusegun Obasanjo, who had on Sunday heavily criticized the Buhari administration's policies and alleged plans to rig the February polls. He takes the opening prayers after being warmly received by President Muhammadu Buhari.
Our Heavenly Father, we thank you, we adore you, we worship you for who you are. God Almighty, omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, eternal, uncreated and yet the creator of all things. We thank you especially for creating Nigeria, our country, the way you have created it, and the resources you have given to it.
The agenda for this meeting is the new minimum wage for Nigerian workers and the forthcoming elections. After a closed-door meeting that lasted for 2 hours, 27,000 naira minimum wage was approved. This decision comes after a series of negotiations between labor unions, the state and federal governments, as well as the private sector.
The bill that will amend the 1981 Act and 2011 Act, the highlights is what you want to know. The figure of 27,000 monthly has been approved for transmission to the National Assembly. Frequency of review of the bill is 5 years to get it in consonance with the pension law of the Federation as enshrined in the Nigerian Constitution. Exemptions to this bill or this act will be establishments that are not employing people up to 25 in number.
From 18,000 naira currently paid, Labour had requested for an increase to 30,000 naira in view of the current economic challenges. This figure generated lots of controversy among the state governors. But after Tuesday's council meeting, the new wage was decided. While the state's governments and the private sector are at liberty to pay higher, the federal government has pegged its minimum wage at 30,000 naira.
The federal government has resolved that their own workers will not get anything less than 30,000, the least paid federal government worker. So the benchmark is there at 27. You can't go below it. But states and organizations can negotiate. And of course, there will be some consequential movement up. And that consequential movement is usually a product of negotiation in what we call in the public service negotiation council, joint negotiation councils.
Meanwhile, the Independent National Electoral Commission has continued to reassure Nigerians of a free, fair and credible electoral process in February. Chairman of INEC, Mahmoud Yakubu, briefed the council of its preparedness towards the polls.
We shall focus on the goal of delivering free, fair and credible elections in 2019, and I want to assure Nigerians that there will be a pleasant voting experience in 2019 and that their votes will count.
The success of election is not by INEC alone. Election will only be successful by participation of everybody. And that whatever it may be, we must take politics out of this exercise, and that all of us owe a duty as leaders of our people, at least to be sure that we have confidence in the electoral body, and at the end of the day, assist the electoral body to succeed.
Among key decisions taken by the electoral body are the simultaneous accreditation and voting process, an improvement of the card reader, training and retraining of its staff, consultations, which it says are all in a bid to ensure a successful exercise. EGHOSA IGUNBOR, Arise News.
Now that we have laid that background, joining us now to speak on the Council of State meeting in Abuja yesterday is Arise News State House correspondent EGHOSA IGUNBOR. Good morning, EGHOSA. Many thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Adesua. It's good to be here.
Great. I also have Fade with me. Let's begin with what perhaps stole the show yesterday at the council meeting. Barely 48 hours after the strong-worded State of the Nation address by former President Olusegun Obasanjo, perhaps everybody was looking forward to if he would be attending that meeting, which he did. He even took the opening prayers. Tell us, what was the atmosphere like?
Well, Adesua, I can tell you that the atmosphere was calm. I mean, like you said, quite a lot of people expected some form of rancor to go on. But, you know, this is one thing I keep telling people about politics. You know, politics is more of, you know, friendship today, enemies tomorrow, and all of that. Politicians, they have a way of making friends today and, of course, becoming enemies tomorrow and coming back to being friends, which is something that followers of a politician should be mindful of, because you see a lot of comments on social media and then you ask yourself, what will happen after the elections if a particular party wins? What happens to the opposing party who supposedly has been attacking the other? You know, so this happens in politics. You see politicians attacking each other today and then tomorrow they're coming back together as friends.
All right. Yesterday was the first meeting of the National Council of State, and amongst them the issues that were to be discussed was the confirmation of the new Inspector General of Police, Adamu Mohammed. Tell us what happened with that.
Well, to the best of my knowledge, that did not happen, even though it was part of, it was supposed to be one of the issues that was supposed to be discussed. You know, the issue of the IG, the confirmation of the IG did not happen. All that happened yesterday was the discussion on the new minimum wage, which was pegged at 27,000 naira. Like I said in my report, states and the private sector are at liberty to increase it, but of course it shouldn't go below. But the federal government agreed to peg it at 30,000 naira as agreed or as recommended by the tripartite committee that was set up by the federal government in September 2017. Of course, that report was submitted to the federal government in November. Now, and you know, I mean, after all of this, there's been several negotiations going on between governments and, of course, Labour on how much the whole thing should be pegged at. But then again, the question now is, because which is something that we asked the Minister of Labour yesterday when he said that states have states will be paying 27,000 naira, and we asked because Labour had insisted on 30,000 naira, and of course you've seen the backlash already coming from Labour. They're not backing down, and they've already threatened that by Friday, when they meet with when the National Executive Committee of Labour meets, of course they will take a decision on what to do, and they've already threatened a shutdown of the economy, and we cannot afford that at this point, knowing that the elections are fast approaching, and of course just coming back from recession, it'll be very dicey for us to begin to have another industrial action. So that's one of the issues that was discussed. And of course, INEC boss Mahmoud Yakub also came to the council and briefed the council of its preparedness towards the 2019 elections, which of course is just about 3 weeks away from now.
Indeed. We know the role of the National Council of State is that of advisory. And so when they peg the national minimum wage at 27,000, it's just advising the government. Do we know what figure the federal government or the government in general, because we know the state governors are also part of the Council of State, do we know the figures that would be transmitted to the National Assembly today? Is it the 30,000 naira or is it the 27,000 naira or both?
Well, from what we understand, I mean, based on what the Minister of Labour and Productivity told State House correspondent yesterday, they are going to transmit as deliberated upon by the Council of State, which is why the Labour Union is saying that the Council of State has no jurisdiction to decide how much they should earn, particularly after the tripartite committee had already met and agreed on 30,000 naira minimum wage. But then again, that is still subject to a lot of discussions, because you know that this bill, I mean, when it's sent to the National Assembly, would have to go through first reading, second reading, and of course refer to the Committee of Labour, Employment and Productivity, which perhaps might throw it open for public hearing. And then again, stakeholders might have to come in and perhaps say what they feel about this. And you know, this is before this will now be eventually passed by the National Assembly and sent back to the President for assent. Well,
thank you for bringing us up to speed with the happenings at the National Council of State meeting, which held yesterday. Our State House correspondent, EGHOSA IGUNBOR, there. Thank you.